For most of the recent decades, the bosses of our top security services rarely broke cover. In fact, we didn't even know what their names were. But Sir Jeremy Fleming, who is boss of GCHQ, gave a big speech in London today warning about China. Let's listen to a few of the words that he uttered.
We and our like-minded allies see technology as a way to enable greater freedoms, greater prosperity, greater global collaboration, and yes, fair competition. But the Chinese leadership's approach is to also see it as a tool to gain advantage through control of their markets, of those in their sphere of influence, and of course, of their own citizens. And in an increasingly complex and interconnected world, we see this as a major risk to our future security and prosperity. And without the collective action of like-minded allies, the divergent values of the Chinese state, we believe, will be exported through technology.
Well, that was Sir Jeremy Fleming, boss of GCHQ, and he couldn't really, could he, have been clearer in the warnings that he gave us. All of which makes me wonder why perhaps he's taken time to say it, but actually why government appears to have taken this in the completely wrong direction. Well, joining me is veteran Conservative Member of Parliament for Halton, Price and Houghton, David Davis. David, it was your party, was it not? It was George Osborne, it was David Cameron, it was Boris Johnson declaring himself the great Sinophile, and we've allowed Huawei into our telecommunications systems. We've also allowed Chinese manufactured spy cameras to be on our smart motorways and elsewhere. The Conservative Party have taken us into this. Now we're being told by the boss of one of our biggest security agencies that this is a dangerous thing to have done. Is there any admission within your party that they've actually got this wrong?
I mean, to be fair, I mean, a lot of us, I mean, Ian Duncan-Smith, me and others objected to the Huawei involvement in 5G.
Yes.
And in fact, it's been stopped. I mean, but, you know, but
hang on, Huawei won't be out of this until 2027. I mean,
quite right, because they've been in since the beginning. I mean, and it's not just Tory governments, it's all governments, I'm afraid. And you're right. I mean, I think Cameron and Osborne's government was particularly kowtowing is probably the right word to the Chinese government, and all of us, frankly, have sort of taken for granted all the cheap goods that come out of China, and with it our dependency on China, whether as you say it's Huawei phones or Hikvision TV cameras or video cameras and so on. And of course we've not thought through the consequences for our national security, and they are enormous. You know, I'm really pleased that the head of GCHQ has come out and said that. It's frankly, even from them, it's a bit late. I mean, I remember a couple of years ago, the previous head of MI6 saying that he thought they'd probably dropped the ball both on Russia and China for an understandable reason. They're trying to focus on terrorism, but they didn't keep an eye on the main target. And these countries, well, let's be blunt, but they're our enemies much of the time. They have different standards, different beliefs. They want their own domination. We should never underestimate. China's invested around the world in resources, and it's inserted itself into our economy from everything, as you say, from telephones to from nuclear power stations.
And it's also busy picking away at the Commonwealth, whether it's Barbados or Solomon Islands. You can see what the game is. David, look, terrible mistakes have been made, right? I agree with that. I get that. GCHQ get that. And you're right, we're very dependent on cheap Chinese goods. How do we reduce that security risk that China poses to us? And secondly, and a much more difficult question, how do we reduce our economic dependence on China?
Well, in a sense, it's almost the same question as you've been talking about earlier with energy dependency. We have to take a whole new view of global free trade. I mean, the global free trade has been the greatest thing on some measure in the history of the world. Last 30-odd years, 1.5 billion people have come out of absolute poverty, many of them in China, of course. But so it's great from that point of view, but we've got to say to ourselves, OK, we're the government, which bits of our global free trade are critical to our ongoing economic development, our ongoing operation, our ongoing freedom? And that will vary from gas supplies, where we should be looking for our own, to electronics, where we should be looking to alternatives to China, maybe Taiwan, maybe somewhere else, maybe somewhere here. We should be thinking very hard about how much, and to be fair, recent governments have thought about this, how much we should allow other countries like China to take economic interests in Britain, controlling interests in electronics and other countries. We need a whole new philosophy of free trade.
Are we going to get it?
Oh, I think what's happening, people like you are raising the flag, and people like me are having to respond and say, we must think through this. You know, I'm a free trader. I'm a liberal free trader. But I recognise that there are limits to free trade, because if you don't take limits to free trade, there's limits to your freedom.
I agree with that. Final quick thought. It's very interesting. Sir Jeremy also said that digital currencies operated by central banks, digital currencies will be a key tool for monitoring citizens' behaviour. He was warning against central bank digital currencies. Rishi Sunak was a great fan of them, wasn't he?
I know. And a blockchain is which is required in those currencies, gives a unique identifier to basically every unit of currency that travels. But you know, there's more to it than this. Even, I mean, the government, GCHQ included, have been wanting us to give up encryption of our own transmissions. There are 1,000 things we have to think about the way we run society, including cryptocurrencies, to make sure that we don't give our individual freedoms rights to foreign nations.
I know you're going to fight it. You always do, David Davis. When it comes to individual liberty, often to the dislike of your own party leadership.
Sometimes.
Which we rather like on this programme. David Davis, thank you very much indeed.